Good evening. Welcome to the Fayette County School Board of Trustees business meeting. It is October 10th. We're here at the admin building. Let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, tonight we're going to begin with a presentation by Ms. Gillman. We're eager to hear what you have to say.
Sounds good. So I'm here to talk about our Office of Special Services. I do have a copy of the presentation if anybody wants a printed copy. Nope, okay. We'll keep going. We're going to keep going. So this is just a quick overview for those. I might not have met every board member. I'm Megan Gillman. I'm the Director of Special Education here in Fayette County and also in Centerville. And just to highlight today, we're going to talk about a little bit about our program here in Fayette County. Just some state level changes that you guys should really be aware of that are definitely impacting our buildings. And that I'll speak more about later, but it's actually Medicaid changes that are impacting our buildings. Just to highlight Fayette County student needs. Some great staffing highlights in here, and then just follow up with some celebrations. There we go. So the key to special education is that every student can learn, just not in the same way on the same day. And that's kind of how we operate day to day. We know that what works this day for a student or for this student might not work for another one. So our entire job is to be creative in the special education world. Just to start, because not everybody comes from an educational background, and especially not a special education background, just a quick definition of what special education is. It's our job under IDEA and Article 7, those are the two laws we operate under, to provide students with identified disabilities specialized instruction to meet their unique needs and giving the opportunity to develop to their fullest potential. So that's what we're tasked with every day, to make our students grow after they've been identified as maybe having a learning disability or some other needs. I do like to put in here what it is not. Some people have some misconceptions about that. Special education is not for all students. It is not the answer to every student that needs help. It's not the answer for every student that is struggling. It really limits us, and a student has to fall into one of 13 categories through a process of intervention before we're going to identify them as having a disability. So it's not for all students. It is not a free pass. I know that this room probably knows that, but sometimes a misconception in the community is if my kid has an IEP, they can't get in trouble, they can't fail a class, they can't, be held back. It is not a free pass. So the students are still held to the same accountability as all of our general education students when it comes to behavior or academics. It's not a way to get out of something. It just might mean we have to do something differently. Which leads right into it's not the same for all. So it really is an individual education plan for every single student. And then the last one, and this is definitely a harder and ongoing conversation, special education is not mental health. So special education is specially designed instruction in a skill deficit. We are not in the business of treating mental health needs. So we do have great community partners, which I'll highlight a little later, that kind of pick up some of those extra needs that a student with a disability might have. And please chime in if you have any questions as I'm going. Just an overview of our program. In special ed, we serve students from the age of 3 through 22. We have some preschools here, but we start serving students straight out of First Steps, which is birth to 3, and we evaluate them and see if they qualify for our special education programs. We're doing some really exciting stuff with our older students. They are not just in our high school until they're 22. So after they've done 4 years of high school, they become super seniors. And we have some great partnerships in the community where they might be in our high school a couple days a week and then starting their next phase of life in adult programming to make that transition smoother as we move forward. So it's not like you've come to school for 18 years, we'll see you, never to see you again. So we've worked really hard to move along and help that transition to adulthood. Just some highlights of our continuum of support. We have developmental preschool, which has continued to grow. So if you've been following Little Spartans, We used to have one developmental preschool classroom. We have 2 full-time developmental preschool classrooms, as well as the partnership with Head Start, that 20% of their program is filled with identified students. So that definitely is a need that continues to grow. Also, we have essential skills. That's a name change for some of you. If you've heard us, and you'll still hear people say life skills, we're moving away from that language in the community, and it's moving to essential skills programming. It's just a different focus. And we do work on academics. So when we call it life skills, there was a misconception that we weren't doing any academic work in those classrooms, but they have their own curriculum, standards, everything that we're meeting. We are getting real creative with some alternative programming. So we have expanded into our middle school alternative setting, which is at SLC, as well as that high school program we started last year. And students with additional needs are benefiting from that expanded continuum of support. And then finally, we do have our resource setting, which is more traditional special education. That is moving toward, for some of our kiddos, a more self-contained support. So we're trying to really create the full continuum of special ed services in order to meet all students' needs. The holes in our continuum right now are really a therapeutic day program and residential programming, and there's a shortage of those across the state. So when a kid needs programming beyond public school ed, we are struggling to fill that gap between, hey, we can't serve you in public school, and all the way to homebound. Those steps in between are a shortage statewide. So just so you guys kind of know what's going on there. Some more state level changes, this is what I alluded to earlier. There's been a large change in Medicaid funding for students with autism. So if you've been in this field, you've been hearing about it, a lot of our students, once they qualify as a student with autism, had unlimited Medicaid funding to seek treatment elsewhere. So a lot of our students were in ABA centers, they might have been receiving applied behavior analysis in their home. The state has made major cuts to that program. The reason I highlight it for you all here tonight is because those students are now coming back into our buildings. They are our highest need students. They often are coming back with little to no support, and they're being dropped in our elementary schools. So this year alone, we've had 3 transition meetings of kids that have never been served in our building that will just show up, and they range from nonverbal all the way through twice exceptional with very large behavioral needs. They've been in a one-to-one setting in a treatment facility until this time. So I just want to put that on your radar as you might see me come back here talking about, hey, why all of a sudden do we have need for more support staff? Why do we have to open another essential skills classroom? It's because those kids are coming back into their public schools. So I want to put that on your radar. I just came from a conference last week. DOE rolled out some really fun changes for us that they're increasing oversight. Yay. So they're doing more audits for our special education paperwork moving forward. So this shouldn't impact the board or our service delivery, but it will impact our office staff and the ability to submit paperwork, get it compliance, hopefully to avoid some corrective action plans. Some other changes just statewide, we've seen an uptick in due processes and complaints. Not here, but in somewhere else I work. We had 31 complaints last year, which is kind of unheard of. Here we had 2. We actually just received our first complaint of the school year this week. So parents are more quick than making a phone call or having a meeting to go directly and file a state complaint with DOE. That does make some more administrative work because then we're having to kind of prove that we're doing what's best for kids, but that's definitely on the rise across the state. The final change, which impacts special education, are grants. A lot of our special education services are funded through the federal grant. So it's called the 619 and 611 grant. Those used to come out in June of every year. DOE is so understaffed that the last year we didn't get our grant until September, and this year we still do not have our grant money. So we are operating with less money from the state to keep our programs running. So that's definitely been a challenge. Any questions on state changes?
Megan?
Yes.
We used to have a title called EH, emotionally handicapped.
Mm-hmm.
How does that fit into this new continuum?
So we still have what's called ED, so it's an emotional disability now, language changed. So those students are in our building full-time. Some of them have, there's ED full-time and ED part-time. Either way, they're in our building.
Okay.
Full-time just means they need support for more than 50% of the school day to get through it. I would say we have an increase in ED students. You'll see that we don't like to put it, this is personal preference, but I don't like to put an ED label on a student when they're in lower elementary school. So you'll see a lot of kids qualify under OHI, which is other health impairment, which means they might have some mental health or other things going on that's driving these big behaviors, and we'll put them under an OHI label. But there's definitely big behaviors that are coming with them.
Are conduct disorders considered part of that continuum?
They are not.
Okay.
Yay.
So the oppositional defiance, that kind of thing is not under this umbrella any longer?
It's not. It's not. So it is confusing when families are moving in from out of state. We do have a lot of out of state move-ins. So for example, in Michigan, conduct disorder is included in their EEH definition. In Indiana, it is not. So we do have a lot of kids that have ODD and conduct disorder that come in. That does not automatically qualify them for special ed. So that's a great question. Sometimes they still qualify. So just.
It just makes it more difficult because of to service those kids and to service those kids in a traditional classroom setting is incredibly difficult when they are disruptive.
Yes.
Which they have a tendency to do.
Absolutely, and so that's where some of that continuum is coming in, that we're getting real creative this year on how do we still meet students' federal requirement of FAPE without disrupting an entire classroom and also without people getting hurt. So we do, and you'll see here in a couple slides, I talk about, we have a lot of externalizing behaviors in our P2 population, which is not traditionally where we've seen those big outward behaviors, but we have, just for an example, this year, we have a first grader and a second grader already on homebound instruction because they were so physically aggressive in the classroom. So that is definitely a shift for us. A little more about, kind of to piggyback on that, what special ed looks like in Fayette County. We are 21% special ed. We're actually 21.8. So we are not under-identifying by any means, and I will tell you, of the 21%, we work very hard not to over-identify students. So we have a pretty set process that students have to move through before we're going to consider them for special education. A lot of that comes from that second bullet of conversations around disadvantage versus disability. So you'll hear us say that. That's our kind of tagline from last year. We started having this conversation. A lot of our students are coming to school with disadvantages, right? So they're coming in with unstable home lives. They might have a lot of drug abuse or just physical abuse in their homes, which can result in some learning challenges for them. That does not mean they have a disability. So it's this balance between, hey, are they struggling to acquire academic skills because they have other things going on in their life, or do they have a documented disability in learning? So we're working really hard on how do we support our disadvantaged kids outside of special education. So there's this constant, how do we wrap our kids in mental health supports, community supports. So I did highlight there, our higher needs kids are connected to mental health supports. I do like to note, just for everybody listening at home, we in Fayette County tend to be in a resource desert when it comes to higher needs mental health supports. When kids need something beyond what Centerstone or Meridian can offer, the access to that support is usually in Indianapolis or Richmond, and our families do not have the means to get their kids to those supports. So we do know that that's a barrier, as well as some home barriers. Shout out to our community partners here. We have a great relationship with Centerstone. They're really responsive. Meridian has been with us for a number of years for additional support. We've had a lot of luck in the last 2 years with probation. It's not a traditional means that you're going to, hey, how do we find support for a kid through probation? But Darian has been phenomenal in getting a lot of our true mental health kiddos placed in either residential or day treatment programs. And we're doing that through probation, which has been great. But we also have PREETs, which is a support for all students 16 and over that have an IEP to help them with that transition to adulthood. So we are trying to wrap them in support.
Ma'am, you brought up a very interesting thing when you mentioned the students that really need that extra care that are actually sent to Indianapolis and Richmond. The school system is not required to pay for transportation?
We are not. So that is,
Okay,
because
that's
it's
right.
not part of their disability, it's
Oh.
their mental health that requires that therapy. So it looks a little
Okay, that's
different.
right, okay.
Yep.
And that's something where the cuts in, done with Medicaid and basically Medicaid for children with special needs, because the parents can't afford, the kids need it, the parents can't afford it, if they can find it.
It's really usually if they can find it and access. So even if a parent has the means to drive them to Indianapolis for a specific kind of therapy, we have some kids that get recommended DBT therapy, which isn't local. They have waiting lists themselves, or a lot of therapists in Indianapolis have stopped taking Medicaid altogether. So they are private pay only, which is just not a reasonable access for our families either. So kind of twofold there that's happening. With all these kind of challenges stacked against us when we're trying to help kids grow and become their best selves, we do have amazing staff. I do want to highlight, which is super rare in special education these days, we have all certified positions currently filled. So knock on some wood, do some dances. We do not usually, if you look at surrounding corporations, most of them have at least a special education teacher posted of an unfilled position. So we have all of our certified positions filled. I think as of today, we just sent a recommendation in to have all of our aide positions filled. That's usually a week-to-week basis, but right now, might be filled. But creativity has definitely been key in that. We have had to get very creative in filling those. One example would be we had to make some changes to an SLP. We couldn't find a new SLP. We've hired a special ed teacher to be a teacher of service in our language groups. So we are having to get more creative in special ed staffing, but still staying compliant with the law and making sure students' needs are met. Another highlight for our staff, just because again, you don't hear about this, we have pretty low staff turnover in our special education teachers. So if you have been here, last year I think we only replaced one, and the year before that we only replaced two. So with the high turnover rate, which is special ed teaching anyway, our turnover has been incredibly low outside of maybe a retirement here and there. We did lose one, but she went and had a baby and didn't want to teach anymore, so stuff like that happens. We do have teachers going above and beyond every day, just jumping in and dealing with stuff that they are not always trained to do, but are always willing to be a team player and help get creative when it comes to these higher needs students, especially when it talks about homebound. So we're asking teachers to stay later in their day to then serve kids that have even higher needs. And I have probably 4 different teachers doing homebound right now, so they are really jumping in. And then as always, we could not live without paraprofessionals. So we have our teachers, but we really couldn't get through the day without our support staff. They're the ones in the classrooms with kids, taking kids for breaks and walks to make it through their day, doing small groups with kids. So without them, our program would not be running. And then just some last minute celebrations, because I want to end on a positive note. I know I've talked a lot about, I'm clicking to Cindy and it's not going. Oh, there we go. Just some awesome things that are happening this year as to meet this new changing needs. We have brand new essential skills curriculum, K-12. So our teachers attended PD this summer. They have jumped in with both feet on the new curriculum for our essential skills classrooms, and there's some great things happening. That's in science, social studies, reading, and math. So they got a whole new curriculum that they had to learn. We had a lot of supply money that we geared toward adaptive seating for all students. So Daniel's here because 50 noodle chairs are sitting at the loading dock right now to be delivered. We know our students need to move more. So we have new creative seating that looks like a regular chair, but it allows a kid to wiggle without falling over all day long if they want. We also have stools and standing desks and treadmill desks. So anything to get movement for our kiddos that is really hard to be in a classroom all day. We've also made some great strides in our assistive technology. We have loaner hearing aids for the first time ever in Fayette County. So a lot of our students are hard of hearing but had no access to aids. Either the parent won't follow through with the audiologist to get aids. So we have students now that can come to school, check out their hearing aids, wear them all day long, and turn them in at the end of the day. So at least during the instructional hours, they have hearing aids. We also have adaptive technology, so kids that need switches to communicate. We've redone all of our adaptive communication devices this summer. So just a lot of exciting things and accessibility features for our kids to access education. Professional development, we've done a lot of training. I talk about little kids a lot, but our 7 through 12 teachers came in this summer to do co-teacher training with IU. So they came in during their summertime, spent a whole day. That included special ed teachers and gen ed teachers that came in to work together to talk about, hey, what's the best way we can co-teach in a classroom to meet students' needs. So that was some awesome professional development. We also have some specialized staff this year that we've never had before. So we have an audiologist on staff, these are contracted employees, so they come in when we need them. But we have an audiologist, we have a language facilitator. We do have a few kids that are profoundly deaf in our community that choose not to go to Indiana School for the Deaf. So we have someone fluent in sign language working with them. And we also hired a CODA, so a certified occupational therapy assistant. Our occupational therapist has been with us for years. Her caseload topped 100 at the end of last year, and there's just no way to serve 100 kids. So we added a certified assistant under her, and that way they're both serving about 50 kids each, which is just better service for our students to meet their needs. And then finally, just a great thing I'll touch on, this happened last year, as you guys know. We didn't have Special Olympics last year. The planning and time that goes into that is pretty extensive. We have flipped that to field day, and our high school department chair took that on along with one of our life skills teachers, and they had that up and running, and they're going to do that every year for us. So if you didn't come to field day last year, I really encourage you to come out there. It looks similar to Special Olympics, but it's a lot less formal. But kids get to do all the activities, and it ends in a pizza party. So who doesn't like to end the year in a pizza party? Just last thing, just again, a quote about the biggest mistake for centuries has been teaching to treat all students as if they were the same individual, and in turn justifying that we're teaching them all the same. This is the conversation we're having. Hey, kids can't just write a paper to answer a test question anymore. That creativity of some kids might be writing an essay, some kids might be doing a video, some kids might be doing an oral report. So that universal design for learning and really integrating that into our classrooms. That's all I have. Any questions about special ed?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I would like to seek a motion to approve the agenda as submitted and amended.
I so move.
Thank you, Ann. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jeremy. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now it's time for public comments on agenda items. Seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda, which includes the approval of minutes from the regular business meeting of 9/12/23, the personnel report of retirements, resignations, leaves of absence, etc., the approval of the September 2023 claims 65874 to 66157, and lastly, quite a few donations this month. A donation of $2,500 from the Fayette County Foundation to Frazee Elementary to be used for literacy events. A PMMI U Skills grant valued at $1,500 to WCC, $1,000 to be used for a table in the welding program, and $500 to be used for a scholarship for the top welding student. Then a donation of $20,000 from Nova Chemicals to help support the food pantry. That was a big one. And a donation valued at $1,680 from Western Cullen Hayes Incorporated to the WCC welding program. So with all that, I'd like to seek a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Laurie.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ryan. Any discussion?
Is that 20,000, is that at the high school food pantry, or is that?
No.
No, it's
Little
used
Spartans.
out of here, but the food pantry's at Little Spartan.
It's located at Little Spartans,
It's
but it's for
located at
any,
Little
Okay.
it's for
It used to be
any,
located at the high school, I think.
Right.
Yeah, it's moved around.
Okay, thank you.
but it's for any family of students in Fayette County, correct?
Correct.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now we will move on to action items. We'll begin with the personnel report. Mr. Harris.
Well, good evening. You're used to me.
Yes.
On the personnel report, beginning, and this was revised, again, the ones that are highlighted are some changes that were made since last week. The recommending for certified personnel, Joanna Reveille as science teacher at Connersville Middle School, Joey Birch as custodian at the high school, Tracy Burns, assistant drama coach at the high school, Robert Fee as the elementary SRO. I'm going to add in here, I think Scott talked about it last month, but we're adding actually 3 SROs that are going to be rotating between the city elementary schools. So we are going to have SROs in all of our buildings. On there, Stephen Gabbard as an educational assistant at Fayette Central, Beverly Higbee as the permanent substitute at Frazee, Jacob Lunsford, elementary SRO, Eric Miracle, custodian at Little Spartan Preschool, Tyler Russell, elementary SRO, Heather Speedy as Title I educational assistant, Delbert Sullivan as custodian at Fayette Central, Melinda Swango as educational assistant at the middle school, Brennan Watson as an elementary SRO, and April Wolf as executive secretary at Fayette Central.
Okay, seeing the personnel report, I'd like to seek a motion to approve.
Madam President, I'll make that.
Thank you, Chris. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jeremy. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, now we get ready for the Mr. Harris show. We'll begin with the approval of Resolution 2023-03 for appropriations and tax rates for the 2024 budget.
The good news is the long presentations were last month, so this will be much shorter, hopefully. First, I'd like to have approval for the resolution of appropriations and tax rates for our 4 main funds: rainy day, debt service, education, and operations. And I remind you always that these are intentionally high. When they are reviewed by DLGF, they cannot increase those if we mess something up, but they can decrease those. And indeed, they will decrease those, particularly the debt service fund and the operations fund. But recommend approval for that resolution.
Randy, is there a percentage that it's usually decreased by overall, or is it
Is there?
that the budget is decreased from this figure by the DLGF?
No.
Oh.
Honestly, it depends on how high you make it. I mean, I'll just pick out the debt service rate as an example. Right now, it shows that it's going to be 0.468. Because of what we're proposing tonight, the second part, kind of the hearing and all of this stuff that we're looking at, the bond issues, I put that number extraordinarily high, not knowing where we were going to go. If we weren't doing anything, I might put it closer to where the real total is going to be. When it's all said and done, I would anticipate that debt service rate is going to be closer to our 0.30 property tax rate, where we expect it will be. Likewise, the operations will decrease, but there's no, depending on school district to school district, this is kind of the, just make sure you're high and they're going to cut it.
Okay, I would like to seek a motion to approve the resolution for appropriations and tax rates for the 2024 budget.
Give that motion.
Thank you, Jeremy. A second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Lori. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. On to the resolution for the capital projects fund plan.
The next one is the capital projects plan as it was presented last month. I'm seeking approval of the resolution to approve the capital projects plan as presented.
Okay. I would like to seek a motion to approve the resolution 2023-04 to adopt the capital projects fund plan for 2024.
I so move.
Thank you, Ann. Do I hear a second?
Second that.
Thank you, Chris. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Post same sign, motion carries. On to the bus replacement plan.
This was presented last month. Likewise, our bus replacement plan going from 2024 out through 2028. I am recommending approval of the bus replacement plan and the resolution that goes with that.
Are we on track, can I just ask, aren't we pushing some of these down? I thought Scott said something about possibly not needing as much of one of these or something?
Yeah, been talking about keeping them a little bit longer.
Yep.
Okay. But that would that move everything then, or we'd still keep the same
It could
plan
change.
for 25, 26,
It could
27?
change some.
Okay.
But we have the opportunity, if the need be, to change. This is a proposed plan based on what we know now, but we have the flexibility to change it down the road if we need to.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. I'd like to seek a motion to approve the resolution 2023-05 to adopt the bus replacement plan for 2024.
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Mark. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ryan. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And we'll move on to the transfer amounts from education to operations.
Okay, and before we do the last one, I just want to remind all of the board members, I'm trying to help Cindy a little bit, there are lots and lots of signatures tonight on all of this, so after the board meeting, you're going to get tired of signing your name here. But the last one for the budget cycle right now is a resolution to transfer amounts from the education fund to the operations fund. This is one that we have followed here for many, many years. The upper level that the state really, they don't want you to go beyond transferring at 15%. We've held it right there at 15%. And this helps us particularly going back that we have a large circuit breaker. We lose a lot of property tax because of the tax caps. And so this takes funds out of the education fund and helps to supplement those in the operations fund. So I'd recommend approval of this resolution.
Okay, I'd like to seek approval of the resolution to transfer amounts from education to operations fund. Monthly, it's resolution 2023-06.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Lori. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thanks, Jeremy. Any discussion?
Randy, taking money out of the education fund, how does that impact the education fund pays our teachers, correct?
Correct.
Okay, how does that impact our ability to negotiate with teachers on new contracts?
It all ties together.
Okay.
I don't know that it specifically, there's not necessarily a trade-off between this dollar to that dollar.
Okay.
We keep pretty well within ranges, knowing that for as long as I can remember, there've been certain things that go back to the general fund days. There was money from general fund they used in operations and those kind of things. So it's been going on for a long, long time. I'll talk a little bit more on my director's report about where we are with contract negotiations and things. But
This is kind of
we've made
just a
some-
perfunctory kind of thing that we typically do in almost every budget cycle.
We have done it every budget cycle since before my time, and I don't know
Okay.
how
Is
long.
this required too by the state now, a certain percentage? or
No,
is it
there's
fixed?
no fixed requirement
Okay.
required by the state.
Okay, I thought that was a discussion. I don't think
If
at the
you go
legislature.
if you go above that 15%, then you have to justify with the state why you are above the 15%. But there's no bottom level, you're not required to transfer any money out of there.
Okay. All right, I'd like to, let's see, where are we with that? Did we?
Ready to
Okay,
vote.
motion second.
Yeah, it's in for a vote.
Okay. Any further discussion? That's right, it was a discussion item, or a discussion piece. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Post same sign, motion carried. Okay. The next item on the agenda is for the board to hold a project on the two proposed projects. If you are interested in speaking at the hearing on either project, please make sure you have completed a blue form located on the table where you entered, which should include your name and an address. After a presentation by the administration and its advisors, there will be an opportunity for the public to make comments about the projects. At the hearing, we will ask that each person limit their comments to 3 minutes and the topic be limited to the proposed projects under consideration. The notice of this hearing was published as legally required. At this time, I'll ask Jane Herndon, attorney with bond counsel, to explain the purpose of this hearing. Ms. Herndon.
Good evening, everybody. Pursuant to Indiana Code 20-26-7-37, Before a school may spend more than $1 million to build, repair, or alter a school building that's going to be financed with bonds or a lease, it has to hold a public hearing. And at that hearing, explain the value of the projects to the community and give the community a chance to make comments on those projects. This public hearing on these two separate projects is the first step in the legal process for these bonds. And after the public hearing, the board's going to be asked to consider resolutions. There will be two separate resolutions for the elementary project, separate from your high school project.
Okay, we will now hear from Randy Harris, Director of Operations, about the process of determining and communicating the projects to the community and the need for the projects.
Okay, I'm going to, first, this presentation, one thing I say is it's not required by statute, but kind of in the interest of transparency, I think the board's been all about that for a very long time with these projects. And so I'm going to kind of walk through where we've been, what we have done. I'm going to get a lot of help from Gibraltar, from Gillman, from Baker Tilly, as we go through this part and just kind of review where we've been and what's brought us to this point of seeking the bond issue. Let's go through here. First, the kind of the statement and what we're looking at. We're looking at, one is the educational needs of Frazee Elementary. Frazee was opened in 1958. It's been around, obviously, for, I know, unfortunately, what 1958 means. That's 65 years ago. I won't mention how I know that so easily. But 1958 was 65 years ago. So Frazee's been around for a very, very long time. But we started this district-wide facility study. I was looking back, I actually think we probably started in about March or April of 2022. So over a year and a half ago, I think our first presentation may have been formally at our June 2022 board meeting. We've looked at needs, desires, wants, everything possible among all of our facilities, not only our school buildings, but we've looked at the central office, we looked at the transportation garage, we've looked at pretty much everything that is within our domain. And we've looked also at where are we with what are our needs and what's the most prudent way of going forward to take care of those most important needs. At Frazee, kind of where we are, we looked at it from the standpoint of we feel like there's some needs of our elementaries, definitely. And while we don't have the money to go with whole hog everything, we believe that there are some extreme needs at Frazee that need to be addressed. And we also believe that's somewhat, I'll call it the safe elementary, that regardless of what steps the board shall take after this point, we see that there's a strong likelihood that Frazee is going to be there in one of the centers of our elementaries, however we go forward. So we're looking at the needs there as far as that goes. Moving then to the high school, again, somewhat similar, that the high school is not going to go anyplace, and we look at the needs that we have there. The high school's been around since 1967, but one of the extreme needs that we see is with the pool facility. The pool is over 50 years old. It has problems that need to be addressed, and we believe that that also has a lot of needs in our community. It has the need for our PE classes. You know, we do live in an area between the river running through and the reservoir very close, that water safety is important. We also have a swim program that all ties in together, but the swimming pool is one that we believe really needs to be addressed. If we don't take care of it now, we're afraid that we could lose it into the future. So it won't be limited to just what we're doing in the swimming pool, but that is one of the big needs, and that really creates the educational need that we have at the high school to move forward with the project, mainly focusing on the pool, but it will drift off a few other places as we go around the high school. So that is kind of the educational need at both Frazee and at the high school, and I will transition a little bit as an overview of the project. I think the next part of it is probably going to be a little bit of a tag team between Gibraltar and Gillman. And I welcome Jim Thompson and Victor Landfair with Gillman. And I'll click the slides up here since we don't have our normal clicker. Chris is gone tonight. So I'll take that. They can kind of tag team about looking at these priorities and what they're recommending.
We do not have our assistant, Chris Kingery. So pleasure to see everyone. This is a significant milestone as you endeavor as a school board to improve the learning environments of the elementary schools with some future forward thinking, and then, as Mr. Harris pointed out, address the most pressing need that's surfaced with what I would call protecting your assets relative to pool. And if you let that go too long, you'll end up with some very difficult, challenging fixes and expenses to get it back up to date. So being very thoughtful and methodical and intentional about what you're going about endeavoring to complete. I'm going to do both projects separately, and then, as Mr. Harris said, Gillman and Victor Landfair will talk about statement of probable costs and planning schedule, very preliminary. So at the elementary school, with Frazee Elementary, we've spent a lot of effort and time talking about where is elementary learning going, where does this school community want elementary to go, and what types of learning environment improvements and what type of future forward thinking, if we initiate some improvements, what will those be, with the understanding that many of these improvements will end up will likely be executed at selected other elementary schools as well. So that's not lost on us. We started, Mr. Harris mentioned the very first meeting months and months ago, but if you remember, what first became very apparent are the preventative maintenance items, updates, replacements of equipment, whether it's the noisy unit ventilators in the classrooms or something that's in the power plant of the building. We want to address those things as part of the project scope. We also want to try to do our best to renovate and update the most important learning environment needs. So that could be the media center or STEM room. We'll look into those items and move forward. And then lastly, should the budget allow, because we're all going to work within the financial parameters you set forth tonight, moving forward, we'll look at perhaps some finish updates, whether it's worn out carpet, fresh coat of paint, new ceiling tile, to help freshen up the Frazee Elementary School as well. So I think we have a clear target in mind, and after these hearings, we'll be able to get started on that. Over at the Connersville High School, if we go to the next slide, that is more of a list of items that are perhaps looking fairly extensive. So again, we'll have to live within the budget parameters set forth, and we'll prioritize these items. But it just helps you and the public see once again, here are things that might likely be included as priorities, and then if budget permits, there's some additional high school things similar to what we're underway with now with the chiller replacement and some piping. If funds are allowed, we'll go back and further the action items of some of those preventative maintenance matters. It's also appropriate to mention that we did hear loud and clear that the board, when they invest in the pool, should something programmatically in the future want to change, whether it be spectator seating or the way the pool's configured, we'll be mindful of the investment we're making now to not eliminate that potential to do additional pool improvements should another board in the future elect, or you as a board in the future elect to do so. I think that summarizes the elementary school, Frazee Elementary, and Connersville High School work for you, so we can have Victor Landfair talk about probable cost and schedule.
Board. As we've discussed in previous meetings, the strategy for financing these two projects, we've consulted with Baker Tilly, and the project limits for a construction budget will be set for both projects at $5,967,500. You'll see a little more detail of where that number came from in the next presentation. But if you've heard us discuss in the past the sort of hard costs, soft costs that goes into building an entire project budget, Easy way to refer to is that hard cost is the bricks and mortar. It is the actual materials and systems and finishes and labor, material to install it. But there are a number of soft costs that it takes to deliver a project. The design services, management services, printing, other ancillary costs, and contingencies. When you're doing renovations, which both of these projects are, you need to set aside dollars within your budget because it's very likely we're going to run into things that we don't foresee behind the wall, under the slab. And we want to make sure that your budget has adequate contingencies to deliver the full project. Because we have no opportunity to come back and ask for more money after we set this budget. So the budget you see, the soft cost is a little over almost $4.8 million. Soft cost is set at 1.193. We will be refining those numbers as we move ahead. Those percentages are roughly 80-20. That's based on our experience. I fully hope that we can reduce those soft costs to put more money into the bricks and mortar as we move ahead and refine those budgets. So we'll be doing multiple estimates throughout the process. So the next sheet looks very similar. We've set a similar budget limit and a similar percentage of soft costs. The mixture of soft costs will be a little different, obviously, at the pool project as it would be from the elementary, and because just the type of construction, we may have different contingencies, and we'll certainly have other different soft costs. But again, the rule of thumb and our experience says we should set aside roughly 20% for soft costs. We've looked at preliminary and a budget for both projects. After we've completed the two project hearings tonight, and then another one scheduled for November 14th, then we will be able to proceed in the development of the design and refinement of that design. As your design team is working with your administration to develop that, there will also be development of cost or refinement of cost. I think Mr. Thompson said several times priorities. We understand that we'll be evaluating priorities, so it's not just simply start to finish, but rather take the design so far, check it against your budget, and prioritize and move forward. That will take us to sometime, probably spring. We'll be in a position to issue the project to bid. The project will be publicly bid and then brought to the board for approval of those bids. Gillman will manage that bidding process. We've set a range of summer or fall to start construction. There's a lot of variables. First and foremost, at Frazee will be what's the optimum time to do that renovation in an occupied school building, and what is our strategy to do that. The other big variable is when can we get materials. You may or may not be aware, but we're still seeing the effects of the pandemic, and of course the effects of a really, really robust construction industry here in Central Indiana and throughout the nation. And so we want to make sure we can get all the materials on site when we need them. We don't want to start too fast and then sit idle. We want to be efficient with our time. So we'll be bringing to the administration a much more detailed schedule, but we have set a commitment to complete the project no later than December 2025. So that gives you some limits on that. Connersville High School pool project, we've established a similar timeline. We expect that the high school project will take less time of construction than the elementary because we'll be able to work in one confined area and a concentrated effort, as opposed to the elementary, which will probably be in multiple phases as we move around the building. I also want to mention that the other part of this bidding schedule was to make sure we optimize the time in which we bid the project to get the best pricing from the market, and the time in which we do the work so that it works best for contractors. We are in a, if you will, a seller's market, and we want to make sure, in order to get the most competition, that we create a schedule that's optimum for the industry. The other, of course, factor at the high school will be, can we create a schedule that accommodates the high school swim program the best? That will certainly be a variable as well. That's that's our budget and schedule presentation.
Then next, we will have Jeff Hammond with Baker Tilly come up and kind of walk through the finances of the proposal.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm with Baker Tilly. We serve as the school corporation's municipal advisor. So, as Mr. Harris mentioned, I'll walk through some of the financial parameters that will be in the resolutions being considered this evening. So, the first place I'd like to start is just with a chart of the school's existing bonds. So what the school currently has outstanding. There are 3 bond issues. You'll notice in 2023, payments are a little under $3 million. And then there's a step down in those payments beginning next year. We'll kind of revisit this chart here in a few slides, but what that step down does is it allows you to look at additional bonds payable out of debt service in a way that can keep your total payments and your tax rate, most importantly, in line with where it's been in the past. So wanted to start with just this chart showing where your current payments are, and you can see that by 2027, all 3 bonds that are currently outstanding would be fully repaid. So whenever I see a structure like this, that just tells me that you're in a good position. You don't have a lot of bonds outstanding for a long period of time. Really by 2027, everything currently outstanding would be fully matured at that point. So the next page here, it's a lot of numbers, but what I'm going to go over are the parameters that will be in the resolutions being considered. So I'll also note that similar to the budget process, these are maximum numbers that we're setting. So at this point in the planning process, we want to be conservative in these numbers to allow for if interest rates were to increase, or if there are just kind of funny things that happen between now and the time the bonds are sold, you don't need to get more approvals or additional approvals. We try to set these numbers high enough to allow for any kind of fluctuations. So you'll see both of these projects, there's the elementary project and the high school project. The total cost associated with each of those is $6,105,000 for a total for the 2 of $12,210,000. The estimated proceeds available, as we saw a couple slides ago, we're showing $5,967,500 for each. And the difference between that borrowing amount and the project proceeds available for the projects are what's called issuance costs. So similar to in your personal life, if you were to take out a mortgage or a car loan, there are fees associated with borrowing money. So we've built those in here, again, trying to be extra conservative and estimate on the high end, so that this number is a number that you can reasonably plan around, and you're not in a situation where you're going to be expecting less whenever bids and the bonds are sold. So we've also built into that number what's called an underwriter's discount, and that is just the bank who purchases the bonds and provides the funds for the project. There's a percentage of the borrowing amount that they take as their fee as well. So that is all included in these numbers here. And we've amortized these bonds over a period of 13 years. The next slide here, you'll kind of see how this exists with your existing bond payments. But you can go up to 20 years, and we've actually, in the resolution, given you the flexibility to do so. If for some reason the repayment term needed to be extended, you have the flexibility within the parameters to do that. I've also included some total interest costs. This is over the lifetime of the bonds. And we're projecting that to be a little over $5.1 million over that 13-year period. And those, again, are using interest rates we feel are conservative compared to where the market is today. There will also be in the resolutions a tax rate associated with each of these projects. And we are estimating that to be 7 cents for each of the projects, so 14 cents total. However, that is based on the maximum payment with the bonds. It doesn't take into account that step down that we talked about as your existing bonds are repaid. So while we're projecting a 14-cent total tax impact as a part of this project, as those existing bonds roll off next year, we're projecting the debt service tax rate to stay right in line with where it was this year, which I believe is at 30.35 cents, which we'll see here on this next slide. So, yeah, with this chart here in this lighter green color, those are those existing bond payments we looked at a couple slides ago. and this bluish-green color represents payments on a bond issue that would fund both of these projects. So you'll notice payments beginning in 2024 and going through 2036. And we're projecting these tax rates based on the 2024 net assessed value, and we're assuming that that net assessed value stays the same and does not continue to increase. So given that, you would expect the tax rate to remain where it is in 2023 through 2026, and then there are some step downs in that tax rate beginning in 2027 that could allow you to look at additional projects funded out of debt service. And I believe that is, I have a couple, these again, a bunch of numbers to look at maybe if you have some additional time, but this here just represents that chart that we looked at the beginning of my portion of the presentation. These are the annual payments associated with each of those bonds, broken down by bond issue. And then the last page of my presentation just takes those same payments and looks at the proposed payments associated with the 2023 borrowing, which would have populated that slide and looked at with both the existing and proposed bonds. So again, just kind of the numbers populating those charts we shared.
Well, that kind of wraps up the presentation, but I just want to again thank, I think we've brought together a really strong team. I'll go backwards, but anywhere from the finance side of things with Baker and Tilley, with the design, build, all of that part of it with Gibraltar and with Gillman, and finally, we joke with her a lot, but and you'll see this the rest of our board meeting here, but Jane Herndon probably is the legal expert on all of these things throughout the state of Indiana. That I don't know of a school administrator that does not know who Jane is. So I think we are in very good hands as we go through this process to make sure we are being fiscally conservative and likewise doing the best with our funds that we can to maintain our schools and to indeed improve our buildings as we go forward. So with that, I will turn it back over to the board and to Leslie, and we'll go through our process. And Jane may want to even come back to the podium so she can walk the board through all of these things. I would encourage you, you're going to see a bunch of resolutions here because we do have two somewhat identical projects, but if you do have any questions, that's why Jane's here to answer any of those as we go through the process. So turn it over to Leslie and Jane.
We now open the public hearing. Remember, if you'd like to speak, please complete a blue form located on the table where you entered. As I mentioned earlier, we ask you state your name and address, limit your comments to the proposed projects and financing. Keep any comments to 3 minutes, avoid being repetitive if possible. May I have the blue forms now? I'll begin calling, oh, well, I don't think we have. Okay. All right, so Ms. Herndon, could you please summarize the project resolution?
Be glad to do that. Thank you for the kind words. We really appreciate the opportunity to work with your school corporation again, and you put together a great team, so we appreciate all of that. As you heard, the financial information are maximums that Jeff provided, as well as the estimates on the construction. So they can always come down, they can't go up without starting this process over. The first resolution is a project resolution involving the elementary project. And you heard that it includes the hard and soft construction costs, all the cost of issuance or fees for that total maximum project cost of $6,105,000. This resolution also incorporates the tax rate impact that Jeff talked about and the fact that as other debt matures, the effect on the overall tax rate is expected to stay level. That is the first resolution. I'm going to go ahead and summarize the second one as well. Or is it, would you rather, maybe just take a vote on that one?
Yeah, let's do that one. So I would like to have a motion and a second to adopt the elementary project resolution.
Give that motion.
Okay, second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, so now the high school.
Again, this is a separate project from the elementary. You could do the the elementary work and never do the high school and vice versa. So factually, they are separate projects. They each have their own maximum dollar amounts. Again, this resolution covers that hard and soft construction cost, the all-in cost of the $6,105,000 maximum. Again, it talks about that debt service tax rate, but as other debt is coming off, it is expected to stay level with the current rate.
Okay. Could I have a motion to adopt the high school project resolution?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ryan, a second.
Second that.
Thank you, Chris. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Are you raising your hand, Ann? Are you?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm making notes. Sorry about
Opposed, same
that.
sign, motion carries. All right. Can you please summarize the preliminary determination resolution, Ms. Hyndon?
So we talked about these two separate projects. The law allows you to fund multiple separate projects under one lease and one bond issue. The reason that we contemplate doing that is there's cost savings, there's efficiencies if we just issue one series of bonds. So the next couple resolutions are going to cover both projects. So this is a resolution that's required in order to fund a project through a lease mechanism. Your school corporation has used that lease mechanism before, and we're going to talk about that lease in the next resolution. But the first requirement under the statute is that the board determine that there are in fact need for these two projects, which is what this resolution does.
Okay, I'd like to seek a motion for the resolution determining need for the projects.
I so moved.
Thank you, Ann, a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jeremy. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Okay, and now the resolution approving the form of lease agreement.
So the lease agreement is going to be between the not-for-profit building corporation and Connersville Middle School Building Corporation. This is the building corporation that this district has used previously. They will be the issuer of the bonds. They will be the lessor of our property or projects, and they will lease those projects back to the school corporation. Your school corporation lease payments then each 6 months are used to pay the principal and interest on the bonds. So it's a structure that all Indiana school corporations use at one point or another, and it's been blessed by our Indiana Supreme Court as legal and viable for governmental entities. This resolution approves the form of this lease, and it establishes the hearing on the lease in November. So at this point, you're just approving the form. The lease itself will be on file here if anybody wants to look at it, and you'll actually have a hearing on it in November. The lease itself, again, has those maximum financial terms in it. So you heard from Jeff, there's a maximum 20-year term on the bonds, although we're anticipating one that's much shorter than that, and the lease will be out as long as the bonds. And it also provides for the annual payment of a maximum of $1,356,000 per year. The first payment would be next year. The sooner you start making payments, the quicker you're paying back principal, therefore less interest cost. And at this point, it would be just to approve this form of lease.
Okay, I'd like to have a motion to adopt the resolution approving the form of lease agreement.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Lori.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mark. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, on to the resolution reapproving the building corporation.
As I mentioned, this is a not-for-profit building corporation. It's made up of community members that have been involved for quite some time, and they volunteer their services. In order for them to issue tax-exempt bonds on your behalf, you have to give them the authority to do so. So this resolution is really dictated by IRS rules and the issuance of tax-exempt bonds. And it also indicates that you don't anticipate issuing more than $15 million in tax-exempt borrowing this year. So those are maximums again.
Okay, I would like to seek a motion for the resolution approving the building corporation.
Make that motion.
Thank you, Ryan. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeremy. Any discussion?
Is this the corporate, is it a pre-existing corporation we're just using again?
Correct.
So we didn't have to go through the whole
Correct,
mishigash
you
of
save some
going-
dollars.
Save some dollars?
Correct.
And this is the one from 20 years ago?
We used it most recently in the refunding. I think the president, if I get this wrong, Randy, help me, James Powell and Greg Morris is the secretary.
George.
George Morris, I'm sorry, George Morris.
Yeah, when we refinanced, or we took some savings out of the middle school, we brought them back together.
But they
That
were
was
formed, they were
3
formed a
years
long
ago.
time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that saved us some money because we didn't have to go through and,
Correct.
we had a committee already established, so we did not have to have a new building corporation then.
Correct.
Okay.
Is it just those two gentlemen?
No, there's a third.
There's a third one, I don't
Can't
have that
remember.
name.
I don't either. I knew the other
Couldn't
two.
remember.
The third one you'd recognize, I'd go blank, he was a banker in town.
Okay.
It's all right.
Lives in my neighborhood. I know who-
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, now on to the resolution, summarize the reimbursement resolution.
The last resolution, thank you for your patience. This is what's called a reimbursement resolution, and it's required by the federal IRS. And it basically is a placeholder. It indicates that if you spend any school money between now and when we close on the bond issue, you reserve your ability to reimburse school funds. So to the extent that you pay for some soil borings or some preliminary costs, you can just reimburse yourself. It doesn't force you to, but it allows you to.
Okay, I'd like to seek a motion for the reimbursement resolution.
I'd like to make that motion.
Thank you, Chris. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Lori. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Jane. We appreciate your help on that. That was good. Okay, now we move on. Persons wishing to make the board aware of suggestions, ideas, and/or comments may address the board at this time. Comments which involve personnel or students must be discussed in private. Seeing none, we move on to superintendent's discussion group reports, principal director reports.
Hello,
Yes.
comments.
Thank you.
Little Spartans Preschool, we're gonna have a Zoo Boo on Tuesday, October 17th. It'll be a trick-or-treating throughout the interior of our school. We have lots of community partners coming, so please come and attend if you can.
When did you say that was, Mallory?
On Tuesday from 6
Okay.
to 7.
Okay, thanks.
And then also the food pantry at Little Spartans will be open on October 19th from 4 to 6 p.m. And this month we partnered with the Fayette County Food Council, who is going to be coming to do a cooking demonstration at 3:30 p.m. And anybody that comes and participates in that will get the food items that are used in that demonstration, and then they'll also be first in line for the food pantry.
All right, thank you. Anybody else?
Just a reminder that school is not in session tomorrow for students. Teachers will be participating in professional development.
Thank you.
Yes, I have a question.
I'm sorry, if you have a patron comment, you have to fill out a form for patron
Oh,
comment.
okay.
There is a form, but we've kind of passed it, but I'd be glad to entertain that if you want to.
Thank you.
While we're having that filled out, Director of Operations.
So I've got 3 items here, but I know you're tired of listening to me tonight. So, the first one, fund report. The fund report, we are pretty much in line with where we were a year ago. I expect this is going to change based on the next thing I'm going to talk about here by the end of the year and going into 2024. That is, expect to see kind of spending out of some of these funds. And with that kind of leads to just notifying the board officially here that we do have a tentative agreement with the teachers union. And I know we're working on another date. We've got to have a meeting to talk about the tentative agreement before we can actually adopt it. But I would expect that the teachers will have adopted things, and we'll be ready for our November board meeting to finalize and wrap up the teachers agreement. And the last one, just to let you know, this is one, I don't know if it pains me to tell you a little bit, but maybe I ought to be thankful of what we've had for the last 2 years. But right now, they have announced that beginning January 1st, there's a 7% increase to our health insurance rates. Like I said, we've had flat rates for 2 years, which is almost unheard of. So that was the good news. The bad news is that insurance is going to be going up in the district by 7%. So that will be reflected both in the teacher's contract and between the board and other employee groups and all of those kind of things. But that's all I have.
All right, Assistant Soup report.
I just have one thing that I want to clarify from last month's meeting. I discussed school data and our plans of increasing student achievement. And in one of the graphs, I put the same number for middle school twice. So their math, ELA scores were the same. So I wanted to clarify that they were actually not the same. Their ELA scores were 33% instead of 17%. Still not where we want it to be, but it's definitely better than 17%. The board had also asked for some information about surrounding counties and what their scores were. So at the bottom, I just put a small chart there so you can see where we compare in comparison to our neighbors. I just tried to use schools that kind of bump up to us or are part of our co-op. So I just wanted to make sure that I clarified that and corrected my mistake on that data chart that I presented last month. And then like Mrs. Blum said, tomorrow is our first PD day for all of our teachers and parent conferences. So we will not have students in attendance tomorrow, just staff. That's all I got.
Okay, and Scott is not here, and I think our patron is coming up with a different.
Yeah, she's gonna talk to me, so
Okay.
we'll be fine.
Okay, for the good of the cause.
Sure. Girls soccer team, first time in
Awesome.
history to win back-to-back
Yeah.
sectionals. Coach Cooley's great with the kids, we're lucky to have him. Tomorrow's,
Regional.
no, that's Thursday. Tomorrow is Take Your Teddy Bear to School Day. And it's also National Day of the Girl tomorrow, for girls that make contributions in our society, so.
Thank you.
I read that today, so I thought those were both
Thanks, I
interesting.
appreciate that. I wanted to mention Frazee School got a mini grant to support Fall in Love with Reading Literacy Night. Carson Geesting was the National Merit
Wow.
Scholar. That was pretty darn cool.
That is.
And boys tennis also won sectional, I believe. Is that
Boys
right?
got beaten sectional.
Oh,
They made it to the finals,
They
I
made it
think.
to the
Beat-
finals, darn.
Yeah, new pal.
Missed that one.
Of course.
Got out of it during that. Okay, anything else from anybody?
Also, on the volunteer day on last Wednesday, all community, I was involved with that, and the students from the Whitewater Career Center were fantastic in what they were able to do. It was like they jumped in, they did whatever was asked for them, they did it incredibly well with a great attitude. And some of the people that were involved with that, with Food Council in particular, were just thrilled, since those kids just did such a fantastic job, and to please let everybody know that they were so pleased to have the extra help. These kids were loading 50-pound bags of dog food and not thinking a thing about it, and doing landscaping, just anything that they could to help. And that's just so important to see kids in the community giving back to the community on that work day.
And to piggyback off that, tomorrow evening, the Career Center is opening for open house for elementary parents and students to come and see what programs we have to offer. That's kind of a new thing that they're doing. So it's on our webpage and their webpage as well, so if anybody's interested.
Is it 6th and 7th grade? I thought that's what I heard.
Yeah,
Is that what
it's
is?
fifth, I think it's 6th and 7th grade,
6th and
yes.
7th, okay,
Yes.
that's what I thought.
All right, it looks like it's that time, Mr. Hunt.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ryan. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed, same sign. Meeting adjourned. Stick around for signatures.